first person who is going to present the paper is on Kazi Nazrul Islam's use of myth, a case study of selected poems. Now I'm inviting Sukanta Biswas to present his paper.
Thank you very much, sir. Am I audible?
Yes.
You are.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. I think it is visible now.
Yes, it is visible.
Thank you. At the very beginning, I would like to congratulate and thank Green University Authority for arranging such a grand international webinar. I really feel privileged to be a part of this knowledge sharing platform. I also thank today's sessions there and host. The title of my today's presentation is Kazi Nazrul Islam's use of myths, a case study of selected poems. Let me introduce Kazi Nazrul Islam at the very beginning. We know he is a very well-known figure. He is the national poet. He is very much related with our national identity, culture, and heritage. He not only as a rebel but also a revolutionary poet marked his robust articulation against all forms of discriminatory and sectarian attitudes and ideologies. The liberal familial atmosphere inculcated a non-communal attitude in the young Nazrul's mind. We know the folk phase of his life is very significant, that impacted hugely on shaping his knowledge on the mythological aspects, as the later musical period at the time to prepare the scripts and perform the musical folk drama. He was exposed with the myth and the stories of the Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, etc. Therefore, Islamic as well as Sanatan knowledge got a united stream in Nazrul. His joining the 49th Bengali Regiment in 1917 was also a huge impact upon his life. Moreover, the philosophy, the liberal outlooks of philosophers like Omar Khayyam, Rumi, Hafiz had also a big influence on him. And returning from Karachi, he was with close contact with personalities like Muzaffar Ahmed, Barindra Kumar Ghosh, Chittaranjan Das, that also impacted on him. And after all, in the truest sense, Nazrul had the notion that he was the harbinger of the unitedness, quote unquote, Bengali Muslims' quest for identity culminated in Kazi Nazrul Islam's in the real sense. So the objectives of my paper is to explore the use and perspectives of mythological characters and elements in Nazrul's poems in the context of the colonized India. The paper primarily delineates how the poet's liberal and indiscriminate spirit of using the myths of a varied cultural backgrounds contribute to eliminate the interreligious uneasiness and prejudices prevailing at the time. The article also investigates into the application of the myth in the milieu of the colonized realities that ignites a revolutionary resistance in the mass people's psyche with the timeless and universal traits of the mythological stories. Now I come to the rationale of this paper, of this study. What has inspired the researcher to attempt the study is to evaluate Nazrul's use of myths and the relevance in the present realities, even after achieving independence from the colonized condition in the prevailing socio-political cultural context or our religious dogmatism, parochial outlooks, and oppressive structures demand we can contextualize the poet's all-embracing egalitarian ideology and revolutionary stance that make the study still pertinent, I think. The paper undertakes both textual and theoretical investigations to elucidate the context and relevance of Nazrul's use of the myth, drawing some critical reflections on Fano, Nogugi Watiango, Paulo Freire in terms of resistance and revolutionary stance against the oppressive colonial forces. Now let me define myth. According to J.A. Cadden, quote, myth is a story which is not true and which involves supernatural beings, or at any rate, suprahuman beings. Myth is always concerned with creation. Myth explains how something came to exist. Myth is considered as the mother of poetry and history. Wilfred F. Fesser contends that myth and history operate on different levels of consciousness. The first being poetic, metonymy, and perpetual, based primarily on emotion. The second, cognitive and conceptual, derived from observation and memory. So the relationship between myth and literature, there is a close relation between myth and literature. Literature is indeed treated as a carrier of myths. Like all branches of literature, poetry is also keeping the mythological elements as its integral parts. According to acclaimed Canadian literary critic and literary theorist Northrop Frye, the quote, the interest of poets in myth and mythology having been remarkable and constant since Homer's time, unquote. Our tradition of myths and Nazrul's approach. Like two Homeric epics, the Iliad and Odyssey of the West, the Indian civilization is gifted with another two epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. As India was under British colony for a pretty long period, reasonably, the Indian literature is influenced by both the Indian as well as the Western myths. Moreover, Indian culture and literary tradition is also enriched with Islamic religio-cultural identities and resources. So many poets, before and after Nazrul, in their poetry, they incorporated myths. However, the synchronized incorporation of the myths of both the Hindus and Muslims, along with other cultural sources in Nazrul Islam's poems, is really matchless. As an Indian and Muslim, Nazrul had the added privilege to inherit and uphold the two cultural traditions, that is the Indian tradition and the tradition from the West Asia. Consciously and artistically, he had inculcated a racial and religious respect that ultimately led him to foster a vision and forward-looking mission to convey a message of love and amity to make a bridge between the two leading communities. Nazrul's use of the myths foreground the spirit of mutual understanding and cultural exchange among the communities in the broader canvas to combat and confront the colonial forces with an integrated effort to decolonize the people from the colonial subjugation and oppression. Nazrul emphasized on the Fanonian violent approach to revolt with an assertive and revolutionary zeal. So here I draw upon the ideas, the theoretical process, the Fano projects, the importance of violence to decolonize, Nogugi Watiango's ideas in the perspective of colonized and the oppressed. Nazrul invested a lot of efforts to articulate an assertive language against the colonies, against the colonial forces. He felt the arts for the rediscovery of the real language of the humankind, the language of struggle. In the language of Nogugi, struggle makes history, struggle makes us. In struggle is our history, our language, and our being. Now, Nazrul's usage of myths in the poems, presentation of violence, war, and resistance. In the first phase of his poetic career, while portraying the colonial misrule as well as the socio-political injustices, Nazrul used the mythological elements in poetry to create an imagery of youthfulness and robust rebellion. In the poems like Proloyolas, Raktambar Dharini Ma, Agomoni incorporate Hindu myths, while the poems like Bidrohi, Dhumketu project the myth and tradition of both the communities that dominantly convey the message of integrity, justice, and equality. in uh, in many poems of Nazrul, Nataraj Shiva implies a perpetual source of energy. The Hindu god of annihilation or destruction is the chief of the Hindu trinity that includes Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. In one form, the god is ascetic and meditative, and in another way, he is associated with evil spirits, ghosts, and devastation. So the wild, violent, and destructive role of Shiva attracted Nazrul much more than anything else. In himself, Nazrul also felt the boundless and fathomless energy and agility of the god as he associated his own love and admiration for all the lawlessness. At least three representative poems, Pralayalas, Bidrohi, and Dhumketu, here the god Shiva appears as a dominant imagery to represent his terrible forces. In the poem Pralayolas, the terrible quote-unquote destruction is welcome to bring into play quote-unquote a new creation, to annihilate all the injustices and hypocrisies existing in society. Shiva, the quote-unquote executioner of eternal time, unquote, is supposed to appear amidst the summer storm, the the wild tumultuous turmoil, unquote, to annihilate the oppressive, exploitative, and tyrannical structure, to rebuild it, ensuring the equality, equity, and justice. In Bidrohi, we also see the revolutionary and destructive spirits, the blending of rebellious zeal along with the perennial romantic desire. The rebel is a constant source of self-esteem, soulful strength, and the sense and sensibility to uplift one's inner beauty. The poem Dhumketu, another poem that also exposes the dark, destructive, and devastating comet that resembles the craziness of wild Shiva. The speaker of the poem proclaiming as the harbinger of quote, the great revolution, unquote, the creator's deadly foe with quote, the burning fire. Along with Lord Shiva, another strong imagery created by goddess Durga in the poem of Nazrul. Durga, also called as Chandi and Anandamoyi and Sinnamasta, her presence is immensely vivid and suggestive in the poems like Raktambar Dharinima, Agamoni, Anandamoyi Ragamone. In these poems, more or less, the goddess is invoked in the present context of the colonial India, where fellow countrymen of Nazrul are undergoing limitless sufferings as they have lost their freedom, safety, and security. The goddess, as the mighty deity, is invited to destroy the misrule and tyranny of the British government, as noted critic Abu Muhammad Habibullah contents, quote, to appear in the most terrible and destructive aspect and descend in a mad dance to destroy the vile oppressive rule of foreigners, unquote.
Dear presenter, you have to finish within the next 2 minutes. I think it's possible, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Now I will skip some poems that I have incorporated to project the presence of the mighty deity Durga in the poems like Raktambar Dharinima, where the goddess is invoked not the in a peaceful manner, rather or not in the white lotus sitter today. Mother is in blood red attire. Okay. Likewise, interestingly and mercilessly, we come across a parallel use of Hindu Purana and Islamic Quranic images in symbols in the same poem or even in the same stanza. In the respect, we can bring Bidrohi and Manush. In Bidrohi, we see along with gods and angels, namely Brahma, Israfil, Pinakpani, two tools of the preserver god Vishnu, Chakra and Shankho are associated. So the different backgrounds, the varied backgrounds, cultural backgrounds are woven in the same poem. Likewise, in the poem Manush, the supremacy of and equality of human being is asserted. And we see in that poem Adam, David, Abraham, Muhammad, Krishna, all are coming together. The prophets and religious leaders of Abrahamic traditions are put together with that of Hindu, Buddhist, and other Indian leading spiritual leaders in a synchronized manner. So the characters and incidents from the epics like Ramayana, the Mahabharata, Purana, Islamic traditions carry the implied and bigger suggestion to convey the sharp, antagonistic, and odd situation prevailing in India. Sometimes India is the motherland. The motherland is treated as the Bharat Mata, the sons, where the sons are fighting to afford the dignity of their mother. Sometimes the mother India is compared with the battlefield Kurukshetra, where the Indians, the oppressed, they are representing the Pandavas, and the colonizers, they are representing the evil forces like Duryodhana, Dushasana. So it is suggested that to regain the long cherished independence, India needs great warrior like Sabyasachi or Arjuna. So the concluding remarks, the mythological characters mostly revolutionary in nature, the gods and goddesses or angels of multicultural and multi-religious backgrounds transcend from one particular parochial identity to a universal height to be the rebellious powerhouse to provide hope, strength, and vigor to the weak, oppressed, and suffering humanity. In the age of dominant colonial structure and psychological subjugation, Nazrul's stylistic and thematic individuality marks a sharp deviation from the Eurocentric literary praxis of the time. One significant aspect of Nazrul's use of mythical character is that he masterly infuses the radical vigor of and speed of it into him. Indeed, the treatment of the myth in the poetry of Nazrul uh, tends to add an invigorating and soul-searching call among the people of all communities. So thank you all. Any question or suggestion, please?
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Sukanta Biswas. It was of the topic was very timely. Currently, we are going through a crisis, we'd say, and your presentation has actually uh, linked that somehow linked that to the current time, and we'll take the questions from the audience.